to start off with maybe the glory days of the mob. Why don't you talk about a little about how you got involved? Maybe I hate to say this, some of the stuff, how it was like The Godfather, how it wasn't, and then what was kind of the beginning of the end. So walk us through a little bit about that, John.
Well, the early days were the exposure through my uncle, through my baseball coach, Albert Ruggiano, whose father was Fat Andy Ruggiano, who was the captain that ran our neighborhood in Ozone Park, Woodhaven area. So those were some different days when I was a kid. And, I really looked up to the idea of the mob was like, back in those days was fascinating as a young kid.
Correct.
And watching these guys smoking cigars and throwing around money. And it was the year of the movies like you just said, like The Godfather, where guys were old-time gentlemen and different mindset.
Okay, so now give us an example. So obviously you grew up around it. You kind of got hooked in, the old adage, money, fame, and local fame, probably getting a restaurant you want to get into, the girls and the whole bit, right? So now, walk us through like the heyday of the mob, like the '80s. Like, what was it like to be a gangster? What were some of the accoutrements that you got by being connected?
Well, you got leadership like back in the early '80s with guys like Paul Castellano. That it's a name that's forgotten over the years, and the younger generation don't even know who he is. But this is what I saw anyway as a young kid, is looking up to the mob and the world of money, glamour, and prestige. You got a guy like Paul Castellano who's bringing in $100 million,
Wow.
a month like it's nothing. So
Wow.
The guy was an incredible earner. He was a gentleman, well-spoken, a businessman. And you look at him as just that, as a businessman. And that era of gangster was, smaller versions of Paul Castellano as far as, what I could see and idolize and wanted to be like.
Wow. So the money was real. So it's a business, right? So obviously you saw Paul Castellano. Obviously he lived in Staten Island. I remember, I think they called him the Pope. And he lived in the White House.
Right.
Very similar to the White House of Washington, right?
Yeah, he's a guy that when you're looking, like, you want to copycat him, because you're looking at a guy that is well spoken, well dressed, well manicured, and he's a guy that's respected in the business world, not just in the city, throughout the world. I mean, this is a legitimate earner, a guy that goes into businesses and knows how to make money. And you're looking at him, and when you see him, he's a figure that obviously you don't get to see him too often, especially in my younger days. But when you do see him, or you do hear about him, or you hear another mobster talking about him, you're looking up to him as somebody would look up to an actor, actress, or a ball player. And for our neighborhood, he was king.
So obviously things were strong back then. So I'm fascinated by the business aspect as well. Okay. So give us, the different streams of revenue you'd make, and if it's okay, if you could share, kind of a little bit of how you did it and what kind of money were you raking in back then? What was it, drugs? Was it gambling? So, how did you manage your business as a businessman, right? How much? Again, what type of business was it in? And what kind of money are we talking about?
Well, you're looking at guys again like Paul, and different guys like Paul that were in different aspects of business, whether it's the Western Beef or owning supermarkets like Key Food, and these were all mob-owned and mob-controlled businesses. So you're looking at these guys and you're trying to copycat what they're doing. On the quiet, down low, we know that everybody's in sports business, drug business, loan shark business, and the thing that I took out of the mob was, I'm not going to be a typical kind of like somebody like a movie character. You talk like Al Pacino and Scarface. A typical drug dealer that's out there shooting guys making money, and a dummy. So you wanted to be more of a businessman. So I would take my money, and one of the first businesses I started to go into was the nightclub business. And I started finding, because I knew it was a cash business, it's a service business. So I wanted to be in a cash business like the parking companies, like the nightclub business, where it's a service business, it's entertainment, and it's an everlasting business. People want to go out, people want to drink, and people need to park their cars wherever they go. So I jumped into those businesses with starters, and then I went into other industries that I didn't know so well, but I had the cash to go buy property, buildings. Like I bought a place down in Tampa called Window Sales, I cashed out the building and bought it cash, and everything that comes in is revenue is going into my pocket. I opened up a window business, car glass business, and also commercial for home, residential and home glass. And that money legitimized me, and my parking companies and my nightclub legitimized me as a guy that I looked up to. Different gangsters that were actual businessmen where you could sit down, eat dinner, use credit cards, and it was the cash would go somewhere else, whether it's to buy cars or buy a house and mortgage it up and then pay it off in cash and do your interior work with cash. You learn to understand to maneuver your money in different ways, but you wanted people to respect you, not fear you. And the fear comes along with the territory of making money and the other stuff that's going on in your life, the violence. But your real goal is to put on a suit and tie, go out to the swanky places, get treated right, and